Your facial features, heart rate, and voice are your unique personal characteristics called biometrics. With more technology gathering this information, one state senator has a bill in front of the Nebraska Legislature that she says aims to add some protection. Joe Harris joins us live from the newsroom now with more details on this.
Aaron, this proposal is in front of the Judiciary Committee next week, but it took one of Senator Kathleen Kauth's constituents to sound the alarm.
Local teacher Dr. Andrea Newsel says her concern over biometric data stemmed from a lesson she was teaching her 7th grade students last year about Snapchat AI.
From that discussion, I became increasingly interested in the state of AI and was curious about what sort of legal protections Nebraska had about the privacy of AI and particularly the use of our own biometric data.
Last year, the Federal Trade Commission warned that increasing biometric information use and related technologies raises significant consumer privacy and data security concerns.
I am concerned that without the consumer protection, that tech companies would assume that that is fair game.
State Senator Kathleen Kauth heard her out and now has a proposal in the Nebraska Legislature addressing it. If passed, it would require companies to first ask for your permission in order to sell your biometric data.
We wrote the bill to make sure that if you don't want to give permission to sell your data, you can still use the service. So you can't be penalized for choosing to opt out.
But there would be exceptions.
If the actual service that is being provided is like the exercise app, where they actually do need to collect your data on your heart rate and stuff, that's actually the product that you want to use, then they would have to still collect it.
It would also require companies to delete data a device collected on you if you haven't used it in a year. Kauth says the state attorney general would enforce any violations.
So the attorney general would say, hey, guess what? You guys aren't following this the right way. Here's the correct way to do it. They would have 60 days to fix it.
Or face a lawsuit. But how would you, as a user, know if a company sold your biometric data?
That is the part that we're going to have to look at for additional legislation.
And she says this bill would just be the base work of protecting biometric data and something lawmakers could modify in the future as it becomes more complex.
Now, the Judiciary Committee is having a hearing on Kauth's bill this Tuesday. Newsel says it may seem like common sense legislation, but she thinks some big tech companies are going to come out against it. Live from the newsroom, Joe Harris, 6 News.